They thought they had finally found their dream home. A quiet neighborhood, green lawns, friendly smiles from neighbors. Just across the street lived the woman who would turn their perfect life into a living nightmare. Her name? Karen. And she was about to show them what happens when you cross the queen of the HOA. Show cinematic drone shot of suburb. Gives happy family moving in. Gives Karen watching from a window with narrowed eyes. The Johnson family was all smiles. The kids ran around the yard. The dog barked happily. The neighbors waved as the moving truck pulled in. Mrs. Johnson looked around and said, "Finally, this feels like home." But across the street, Karen's curtains moved. She was already watching, clipboard in hand. Later that day, as Mr. Johnson unloaded boxes, Karen approached. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes sharp. "Karen, welcome to the neighborhood. I'm the head of the HOA. You'll be seeing me around a lot, Mr. Johnson." "Oh, great, nice to meet you." What the Johnsons didn't know was that this wasn't a friendly introduction. It was a warning. The very next morning, a paper was taped to their front door. "Your grass exceeds HOA regulation height." Immediately, Mr. Johnson laughed. "We just moved in. How could it already be too high?" But before he could brush it off, Karen appeared on the sidewalk. "Karen, rules are rules. Grass should never exceed 2 inches. It's all in the HOA handbook. I suggest you read it." The family thought it was just a small misunderstanding. They mowed the lawn. Problem solved, right? Wrong. That night, another notice appeared. "Your car is not HOA approved. Color must be neutral. Repaint or remove within 10 days. Mrs. Johnson was furious. "Our car? That's ridiculous. How can a color break HOA rules?" But Karen wasn't done. The next day, another notice. This time about their dog barking, Karen. "Your dog is a noise violation. Some of us enjoy peace and quiet." The Johnsons started realizing this wasn't about rules. This was personal. By the end of the first week, the family had collected 5 different notices. Lawn, car, dog, mailbox. Not community standard. Even the shade of curtains in their living room. The Johnsons decided to push back. Mr. Johnson called the HOA board, explaining this had to be a mistake. But instead of listening, the board doubled down. All notices are valid. Non-compliance will result in fines. And within days, the fines started piling up. $50, $100, $250. Karen had the full HOA backing her up. And now, the Johnsons were officially labeled non-compliant residents. Neighbors, who once smiled politely, now avoided eye contact. Some whispered as they walked past. Family felt isolated, alone, targeted. Karen's visits became daily. She would walk slowly past their house with her clipboard, making notes, shaking her head disapprovingly. Sometimes she wouldn't even knock. She'd just leave a notice and smirk at their doorbell camera. One night, the Johnsons caught her, measuring their trash bins with a ruler. Another time she took photos of their kids' bikes left in the driveway. Mrs. Johnson angry. "This is harassment. She can't keep doing this." Mr. Johnson defeated, but with the HOA behind her. What can we do? Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was hunting for reasons to push them out. After 3 weeks, the family had over a dozen violation letters and nearly $1,000 in fines. The stress was unbearable. The kids asked why Karen was always watching. Them, the dog barked less, almost as if he knew he wasn't allowed anymore. Mrs. Johnson couldn't sleep, always fearing the next knock on the door. Finally, Mr. Johnson snapped. He confronted Karen on the street. "Mr. Johnson, why are you doing this? We've done nothing wrong." Karen smiling coldly. "Nothing wrong? This is my neighborhood. People like you don't belong here. The sooner you learn that, the better." Then she walked away. The Johnsons realized Karen didn't just want control. She wanted them gone. The Johnsons sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by letters, notices, and threats of lawsuits. It was clear now. This wasn't going to stop, not unless they fought back. But how do you fight someone who controls the entire neighborhood? This was only the beginning. and the Johnsons had no idea how far Karen and the HOA were willing to go. The Johnsons thought the endless fines were bad enough, but they hadn't seen anything yet. Karen wasn't just after their money, she wanted total control. When the family refused to give in, Karen declared an all-out war. This wasn't just about HOA rules anymore. It was about power, corruption, survival. The Johnsons weren't the only ones Karen had targeted. One night, when Mr. Johnson took the trash out, a neighbor quietly whispered, neighbor low voice, she did the same thing to us. Don't let her scare you. Another neighbor slipped a note under their door. We know what she's doing. You're not alone. The Johnsons began to realize Karen had been tormenting families for years, but no one had stood up to her. Mrs. Johnson began digging through HOA records. It wasn't easy. Karen tried to keep everything hidden. But after requesting financial reports, cracks started showing. Thousands of HOA dollars spent on community improvements. But the only upgrades were in front of Karen's house. Expensive landscaping invoices. But no new plants anywhere except Karen's yard, HOA-funded maintenance work. Done by Karen's brother's company. The Johnsons had uncovered something big. Karen was using HOA money for herself. When Karen found out the Johnsons were asking questions, her attacks grew worse. She called animal control on their dog. Claiming it was dangerous, she filed a complaint that their kids' bikes were abandoned property. She even sent a letter threatening foreclosure if fines weren't paid immediately. The family was terrified, but instead of backing down, they started documenting everything. Photos, videos, receipts, even recordings of Karen's threats. Karen thought she was scaring them into leaving, but she was only giving them more proof. Finally, the Johnsons decided to confront Karen publicly at the next HOA meeting. The room was packed. Neighbors whispered nervously. Karen stood at the front with her clipboard, smug as ever. Karen, the Johnsons have violated nearly every HOA rule. They are a disgrace to this neighborhood. But then Mr. Johnson stood up. He pulled out a stack of papers. Mr. Johnson. Actually, we've been keeping records, and it looks like the only disgrace here is you. Gasps filled the room. The Johnsons presented proof of Karen's misuse of funds, unfair fines, and harassment. Karen turned red with rage. Karen shaking. Lies. All of it. You'll regret this. The room fell silent. For the first time, the neighbor saw Karen's mask slip. The next day, retaliation came fast. Karen filed a lawsuit against the Johnsons for defamation. She had their mailbox padlocked. A tow truck showed up to repossess their car, called in by the HOA. It was clear Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She would destroy them before she gave up power. But what Karen didn't know was that the Johnsons weren't alone anymore. Other neighbors were finally ready to speak up. Late that night, Mrs. Johnson looked out the window and saw something chilling. Karen was standing across the street. No clipboard, no phone, just staring at their house. For nearly 20 minutes. This wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This was personal, and the war was about to turn deadly serious. For months, Karen had terrorized the Johnsons. But now, the truth was out. The neighbors were rising against her. And as her empire of lies began to crumble, Karen grew more desperate and more dangerous. This was the beginning of the end. After the HOA meeting, something changed. Neighbors who had once stayed silent began reaching out. They shared their own stories. Families fined 4 wrong flowers. Threats of foreclosure over tiny violations. HOA funds mysteriously disappearing year after year. Together, they formed a group. And for the first time, Karen was outnumbered. The Johnsons and their new allies gathered all the evidence. Karen's financial fraud, fake violations, audio recordings of threats. They brought everything to the county inspector. And then, the local news. Reporters loved the story. Within days, the HOA scandal was everywhere. Cameras showed up on Karen's street. The story went viral. But Karen wasn't ready to give up. She stormed into the Johnsons' yard, screaming at them. Karen, you think you've won? I am this neighborhood. Without me, it all falls apart. The Johnsons calmly recorded everything as she raged. Neighbors watched from their porches, some even filming on their phones. Karen's image, once intimidating, was now pathetic. Within weeks, the investigation was complete. Karen was removed as HOA president. The HOA board was fined heavily. Karen herself faced charges for embezzlement and harassment. Her power, her reputation, and her empire gone overnight. The Johnsons, once isolated, were now community heroes. Months later, the neighborhood looked different. The lawns were still green, the fences still painted, but the fear was gone. The HOA was rebuilt under honest leadership. Families laughed together again, and the Johnsons. They finally felt at home one evening. As the sun set, Mrs. Johnson said, "It's over. We can finally breathe again." But just as the family settled back into peace, a new neighbor moved into Karen's old house. And from the window, the Johnsons thought they saw something familiar. A curtain moving, a face watching. Gone. But was the nightmare truly over? Fade out on suspenseful music gives perfect for teasing next episode asterisk.